Hi guys, my name is Davud or David. You can just go by either name. Uh, what I'm planning to talk to you about is uh, the speaking component of the test. Before we carry on, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself, right? So you get to know me a little bit. I'm a very experienced teacher in ESL and test prep. I have something around more than 25 years of experience teaching ESL and EFL, something around say 15, 16 years of experience teaching that. Also 10 years of ESL. So in total, I've taught like 25 years, both ESL and EFL to students from all across the globe, students from anywhere you can imagine. And I do have more than 10, 14 years of experience teaching test preps. Test prep, like preparation courses for standardized tests like Ielts, CELPIP, TOEFL, and tests like that. Anyways, it is probably good for you to know that I've also been an examiner. I have worked with University of Cambridge and the British Council, and I have been an examiner for 5 Cambridge examinations. These are some of the most prestigious exams in the world. I've been an oral examiner, that means interviewer. So I have interviewed a lot of people just like yourselves to determine these candidates' levels and then basically help them achieve their goals. Something interesting for you to know is IELTS has been developed by University of Cambridge and the British Council. These two are British, and IDP Australia. My experience is with those 2 British ones, and I've helped a lot of students like yourselves to basically write the test, achieve their goals, and go to university or immigrate to Canada. As you know, IELTS is used both for immigration and academic purposes. Yeah. So IELTS, as you know, has four parts, 4 components. These 4 components test the 4 major skills in English. So these components include listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Speaking is the last part of the test. As you can see here, the IELTS speaking component or part or the interview is about 11 through 14 minutes. So it's minimum 11 minutes, maximum 14 minutes. The speaking is divided into these 11 through 14 minutes, divided into 3 parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Part 1 lasts between 4 and 5 minutes. And it's a 2-way kind of communication. By 2-way, I mean question, answer, question, answer. So you have 2 ways, just like a 2-way street, right? So the interviewer, a person like me, asks the candidate, people like you, questions, and you answer. This part, the 4 to 5 minutes, is further divided into 2 smaller parts. A, so it's about 2 minutes, and then B, 2 to 3 minutes. I will explain this right now, and then I will move on to parts 2 and 3. In part 1, the first half of part 1, which is about 2 minutes, you will be asked questions about your identification, ID. ID stands for identification. So it's about knowing you. It's about identifying you. So as you can see, some of the questions are as follows. First name, last name, spelling of your name, how you spell your name. If you have an English name, for example, what you do, what your job is. Date of birth, DOB, stands for date of birth. Place of birth, where you are born, POB, place of birth. And questions like that. So you need to give very short answers in this part. So when I ask you what your name is, you just give me your name and that's it. When I ask you what your last name is, you only give me your last name. You don't talk about the meaning of your last name or anything around that. We just need you to give us short answers. This part usually comes first because we want you to feel a little bit more relaxed. You already know the answers to all these questions. So this gives you a little basically time to settle down and feel more relaxed because we know you're stressed out. That's the interview. Most candidates feel the pressure and stress. So in order to help you get the stress off, we ask you these simple questions. After these questions, which last about 2 minutes maximum, you see 1 to 2 minutes. Then we're gonna ask you more questions. You have to give longer answers to these questions. These questions are about your habits, your likes, your dislikes, hobbies, weather, sports, activities, culture, dancing, music, flowers, etc., etc. They're about a lot of things, but they're in general. Like, for example, let me ask you about, for example, music. Do you like to listen to music? So you say why. Then if you say yes, then if you say, you answer why, yes or no. Once you answer, this is not enough to say yay or nay. We expect you to explain. That's why we follow that question with a why. So you have to explain why you like music or why you don't like to listen to music. Then I might continue asking you more questions about music. For example, what kind of music you like to listen to, or you listen quite often. So you tell me about your favorite type or genre of music, and then I would ask you why. You would have to explain why you're interested in that type of music. So here in the second half of part 1, you would have to give longer answers, not just very brief and answers like yes, no, right? But in the first half, yeah, the answers are pretty short. So after this, your 4 to 5 minutes is up. We are going to move on to part 2. In part 2, again, we have 2 smaller parts. Part 2 lasts between 3 and 4 minutes. It's one way. That means you are the sole speaker. You are the only speaker. The examiner will only listen to you. And so you would have to use your time and talk and fill the time you're given. Now let's see how it works. First, they give you 1 minute and a bunch of questions. So you have one main question at the top. This is the main question. And then some follow-up questions. These questions are related to this question. So they're all about the same thing. You see here, part 2. So A, prepare answer to questions on cards. I showed you the card right now, okay? That's about 1 minute. During this 1 minute, you prepare your answers to those questions. Then, after your 1 minute is up, you will have to answer the questions on the card. You can look at the questions, and then you have to talk for 2 to maximum 3 minutes. So in total, 1 minute, 2 to 3 minutes. It would be between 3 and 4 minutes. So this is what part 2 is. When you're answering, you have to answer all the questions. It's important that you answer all the questions. Don't miss out on any of the questions because you're gonna lose points. You must use your 2 minutes, the time they give you. So don't be too slow, don't be too fast. If you're too slow, you can't finish all the questions. If you're too fast, you have a lot of time on your hand, and well, you have nothing else to say. So this is not so good. You're gonna lose points. And after this part, we're gonna have part 3. Part 3 is again between 4 and 5 minutes. It's a two-way sort of conversation. Part 2 was one way. You are only speaking in part 2, but in part 3, again, like part 1, it's question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. In part 3, we just have one part. It's not divided into smaller parts. You need to give long answers, detailed answers. It's very important that you provide as much detail as you can to the questions you're going to be asked. And these questions, more or less, have to do with the questions you had in part 2. Okay?
Sir, I have a question is,
Sure.
what do you think that when a student that have an interview with you that can get the 7 or 7.5?
I'm not clear about your question. You're asking me what I think?
Yeah, I just want to know that when a student is talking with you, that how can you consider it 7 or 7.5?
Basically, look, when we evaluate students, since speaking and writing are very subjective, they're not like reading and listening. When it comes to reading and listening, we have answer keys, okay? So we match up your answers with the answer key, right? It's easy for the examiner to figure out like how many correct answers you have, how many wrong answers you have, and based on the number of correct answers, they can score you. But when it comes to speaking and writing, it is pretty subjective. That means, like you asked me, you want to know what is going on in the mind of an examiner when he or she listens to you or interviews you, or when they read your essays. You want to know how they just mark your essay. I can't tell you about all the details because part of the detail is confidential. We can't share this with anyone, but I will definitely tell you about the things you need to know. We do have a rubric. You know what a rubric is, right?
Yes, I know.
So when it comes, for example, to the speaking component, there are certain criteria such as pronunciation, intelligibility, I mean how intelligible you are, how clearly you pronounce, then task fulfillment. Task fulfillment means you basically do what you're asked to do. You answer the question in a very, very relevant way, right? So if I, for example, asked you to talk about table, and if you talk to me about chair, this is not basically relevant, right? You may think, okay, chair is a piece of furniture, table is also a piece of furniture, and I talked about a piece of furniture. That's right, but my question was table. So if you fail to talk about table, and even if you talk about desk, right? That's not the answer. So this is task fulfillment. That means the candidate, I mean a person like you, should be able to understand the question quite clearly and then respond to the question properly. We call this task fulfillment. So you do what you're asked to do. Then the next criterion is basically your range of vocabulary and idiomatic expressions. The other thing is the sentence construction, the type of sentences you use, how complex your sentences are. So if you just use short and simple sentences one after another without, for example, using compound or complex sentences, or without using transitions or transitional words, so these things would pull down your score. Your range of vocabulary is another thing. The idioms you use is another thing. How relevantly you talk to the topic and your knowledge of the subject matter is another criterion. And finally, your gaps, your fluency, how fluent you are, that's still another factor. So we consider all these things, but this is not all. These are the criteria based on which we assess you. But when it comes, for example, to pronunciation, for each and every criterion, we have a whole bunch of questions, right? Examiners must answer those questions when they're interviewing a candidate. We call these statements can-do statements. Can-do statements means if the candidate, right, a person like you, if the candidate can do these things or cannot do these things. So if you can do this, if you can do that, if you can do a lot of things, right, we tick them, we check them. And if you cannot do certain things, we check those things. These can-do statements will help us figure out where you exactly are, where you stand exactly. Whether you are 7, you deserve a band score of 7 or 7.5 or less. So these can-do statements can help an examiner figure out where a candidate is in terms of their speaking skills. So this way, Cambridge and the British Council, as well as IDP Australia, have decided to make judgments because, like I said, it's subjective. They want to make it as objective as possible, like the reading part, like the listening part, because we cannot judge you. For example, if I interview you, I can't say you deserve a band score of 6, and then another examiner comes and says, no, she deserves a band score of 4.5 or 5. This is unacceptable. Cambridge does not accept this. So all examiners must be very close. So when I say you are 6.5, the other examiner could also say 6. Half a band score difference between my judgment and another examiner's judgment is acceptable. But 1 band score is unacceptable. This is why they have these can-do statements, these rubrics, to make examiners similar in terms of their judgment, to bring them as close as possible so they can judge you more objectively. And this is only for the sake of you candidates. They just want us to be fair to you. So this is how you're going to be judged. Excuse me. Same thing is true of the writing. Again, for writing, we have rubrics and can-do statements, and then we match everything against those rubrics and statements. So this is how we basically mark you and score you. So I have we are trained not to be affected by factors like appearance, nationality. None of these things can affect us. We only stick with the facts, like your pronunciation, how relevantly you talk, how fluent you are, your range of vocabulary, your type of sentences, the idioms you use. You know what I mean? All these things. So we judge you based on these things.
Thank you.
So, sir,
Yeah. Sure.
Does the pronunciation depends on the marks depends on the pronunciation?
To be honest with you, accent, okay, like, you know, English is spoken by many people all across the globe. So
Yeah,
almost everyone, you know, does have accent. We
yeah,
don't care about accent.
Yeah.
But yes, as long as your accent, all right, does not hamper meaningful and effective communication. I mean, as long as your accent is intelligible, right? As long
okay,
as the examiner doesn't have to just, you know, try hard and struggle to understand what you have to say, it's fine. Everybody has accent and that's acceptable. But what you're asking me is pronunciation, right? I
yeah,
talked about accent. So as far as accent goes, rest assured that's not an issue, right? But pronunciation wise, when it comes to pronunciation, obviously we take that fully into account. If someone's pronunciation, let me give you an example. If, for example, you're supposed to say, uh, for example, Amy, she was going to use politics, but she said police, right?
yeah,
That was the wrong word, right? So she's gonna, if she repeats this, if she uses that once and then she corrects herself, right? For example, she says, I'm interested in police. And then she corrects herself and says, I'm interested in politics. No problem. We like it because she's aware. She knows that she made a mistake. She had an error. She fixed her own error. We call this self-correction. That's not an issue. But if she uses police for politics, right? Or if this is called the wrong word, so she's going to lose a point for this and does not correct that. Or if she, for example, says uh, politics
yeah,
rather than politics, right? Politics. This is mispronunciation. That's a mistake, and we're going to take it against her. So accent, no issue. Mispronunciation, big issue.
So if I see something wrong and I correct myself, will that affect my marks?
No,
No.
no.
Like if it happens like many times.
If it happens many times, that's sign you are not confident. You have issues regarding the usage of words. Yes, you're gonna lose points on that. But once or twice it happens, not a problem. We understand that people are stressed out,
No.
and we don't take it against them. But if that happens several times, obviously that's gonna affect you. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestion about how can we improve our speaking?
Absolutely. Well, I can just put it in a nutshell. This piece of advice is simple yet complicated. There is no there is no quick fix or fast track way of improving your spoken English. The only way you can improve your spoken English is exposing yourselves to English. By that I mean expose yourselves to uh, English sources. It could be news programs, it could be watching movies, it could be songs, it could be native speakers, all right, or non-native speakers whose English is good. You have to expose yourself. Exposing yourself means be in touch with these people and communicate with these people. The more you communicate, the more confidence you're going to build up in you. And so you would feel more comfortable doing this. For those of you who are in Canada and have like Canadian friends and classmates, try to communicate to your native English, I mean English speaking friends as much as you can. The more you talk, the more fluent you will be. But if you think you just can listen and your speaking improves, I would say while listening can help you improve your speaking, it's not going to be the solution. You need to talk. There is no other way, right, that is effective or more effective than this. You definitely need to speak and speak and speak. That's the only remedy. Now, within the limited time you guys have, now it's for you to figure out how much you should just speak. Or like I say, expose yourselves to English. It's just like, English is like a pool, like a swimming pool. Jump in it, jump into the pool. Don't worry, you're not gonna, get drowned. You have to, the more time you spend in this pool, the more, I would say, the more skillful you will be in keeping yourselves afloat and not to get drowned. So imagine that's like a pool, swimming pool. Jump into it. I figure that's it for the moment. So if you have any questions, do please ask. Otherwise, well, I figure that's the end of it for today. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I hope that was useful. So have a wonderful day and night because you're in different parts of the world.